Hello everybody, it's Mike Vonbeardingham, and this evening I am joined with a very, very dear friend of mine, the incredibly intelligent, the very lovely, and one of my favourite people in the world, Laura Bassingthwaighte. Hello, darling.
Hello. Hello, darling.
How are we?
You okay? I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for letting me use your platform to talk about domestic abuse.
An absolute pleasure, as much as it can
Yeah,
be when talking about a subject of this
yeah,
magnitude. Um,
exactly.
Amanda, Miss Bavnani says, "Love you both, you legends." Ah,
Oh, love you too, Bev.
love you, Bav. Right. So that I don't completely screw up this introduction, I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself. So, as what you do is quite intricate, and I think you would be the best person to explain it. So, who are you and what do you do?
Thank you. So, I am a drama therapist, which is not drama therapy for actors, which is what I've had many times. It's not that. It's actually a form of psychotherapy. So it's for anyone that suffered a trauma or has learning difficulties or struggles with their emotions. It's an artistic form of working through therapy, and it looks at past behaviours and how they can affect your day-to-day life now. So it's a reflective way, and we do that through lots of different mediums, through creating stories to working with metaphors, so lots of things like that. And I used to be a teacher. I used to be a secondary school teacher, and one of the reasons why I became a drama therapist was because in 2012 I was in a domestic abusive relationship with a teacher who actually worked at the same school as what I did. And yeah, it was really, really hard to have to manage that, especially with professions. And it was only a 4 month relationship,
Mm.
but in that time, I suffered with a quite a severe injury. I actually had a physical injury. I don't know if you can see my finger there, but I've had to have 3 operations, a knuckle replacement from that that relationship, which affected long term my whole life really from 2012. So it really pushed me into actually wanting to pursue a career in helping others. And actually it was thanks to Relate, came in and did a workshop at school with the children to teach them about what domestic abuse looks like. And it was Laura Draper from there, and she was amazing, and she just heard my story as well, let me be involved with the drama that the kids created, and that was the push for me to go out and help others after having lots of therapy and working through it myself. I'm in a place now where it's part of my job, and I work with families. I work with perpetrators within families, so like children or partners, and victims as well. And I try and help them resolve and support and try and break the cycle throughout their lives and their relationships going forward.
So, regarding this conversation, do you want to talk? Because I suppose, the main angle we were going to speak was the sort of the professional point of view. But
Yeah,
are you looking to talk about your personal experience as well, or what would you
I,
prefer to do?
I don't mind if that. Obviously that's going to come up,
Mm.
and I can use examples if needs be, if you want to, because obviously I have first-hand experience of it from both sides. So if people do have questions that they want to ask, then of course that's absolutely fine.
Okay,
But it's just however it goes, really.
cool. First thing I'm going to do is raise this chair because I think that's better. Now we're more on kind of an even head height, and I don't feel like I'm sitting in a little chair. So, with the kind of therapy that you do and the traumas you help people deal with, how many of those would you say, on a rough percentage, come from a domestic abuse situation?
So a lot of the work I do is with adopted children,
Mm.
and a lot of them have had to be removed because of domestic abuse.
Right.
So that's one of the main things. So out of the percentage of the work I do, all of it is trauma based, but it being domestic abuse in whatever form, whether it's prior to them being adopted, I would probably say 80% of my work works with domestic abuse. It's pretty high.
That's a really high percentage.
Yeah.
God.
Mainly because I do a lot of adoption work, which does link to that.
Yeah.
But in other areas that I work in, yeah, it's pretty high.
So I suppose if we start from you've been very professional, sent me a PowerPoint presentation. I'm impressed. So I think that would probably be a good place to start if we work our way through that, because then we can obviously integrate all the different elements from real experiences and everything as we go. Tracy Frost is, hey Mike, hi Tracy. Tracy's also going to be one of my guests as well.
Oh yeah, amazing.
So that'll be awesome. So shall we start from I've even got a button that brings it all up. Yeah, my magic button. So should we go for the intro picture?
Yeah. So the intro is breaking the cycle. So we're going to be looking at understanding what abuse is and how to break the cycle. So that's really the first thing. There's some stats that have really changed. I can't believe how much it's changed. 8 years ago, when I was going through understanding about what domestic abuse was, it was 1 in 5 women, 1 in 7 men. It's now 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 men that will suffer domestic abuse in their lifetime. Which is quite astounding.
Is there are there any sort of, obviously there are reasons, but are there sort of researched reasons, accountability for this?
I think the Me Too movement really helped, because a lot of people came forward after that movement. When there was a lot of harassment, people were speaking up more. I think people are much more aware of domestic abuse now, thanks to platforms like yourself, and the way it's covered in the media and also programs about it. There's a lot more awareness. There's courses that people can go on. That's much more aware. In terms of why it's happening more, I was doing some research in terms of COVID and whether there has been an increase. But from what I've seen from the stats is that there has been more domestic abuse reported, but mainly by third parties. I think because we're at home more, people are hearing like altercations at home and then they're reporting it to the police, rather than it being abusers, victims of abuse coming forward and naming it. I think it's probably more difficult for them now. I know that Boris said about you can leave a domestic abusive relationship whilst you're in lockdown. That's a place that is something you're allowed to do. But I think a lot of people have actually closed off and been stuck further into this into the relationships because of COVID, and that's affected. I know it's affected everyone's mental health generally, but if you're stuck in that situation, it's going to impact.
So do you think it's a combination of the fact that we're more aware of it, it's being reported more, so it's still been going on in the background, but now we're just being made aware of it, and also so situational times is obviously increasing tension in relationships at home and things like that, so we're getting more of it as well from that angle. So I suppose it's good that it's being talked about more and we're hearing about it more, but it's also highly devastating, isn't it, when you look at the statistics and you think 1 in 3, that's a lot of people. Right, so shall we move on to our slide number 2?
Yes, I do want to say one of the most, my friend Gemma asked me, what's the most important thing you want to tell people in the interview? And I would say the most important thing is that, and a domestic abusive relationship, domestic regardless, can happen to anybody. Nobody is immune to being in an abusive relationship, because it takes three fundamental things for those things to happen. Vulnerability, which is a quality or state of being which is exposed to the possibility of being being harmed either physically or emotionally. So vulnerability, fear, and coercion are the three things. Because if you're coerced into something, which the definition of coercion is the practice of persuading someone to do something by using force or threats. And they're the three things that can cause anybody, if they feel vulnerable, if they have fear, and that leads to coercion, then that's basically the fundamental parts of an abusive relationship.
And it can happen in so many different ways, can't it? It can be subtle ways, it can be brutal ways. People can realise that they're being, as you say, coerced, controlled, without even realising it until they're really in deep.
Yeah, and that's how it happens. That's how quick it can happen. It's not suddenly, oh my God, I'm in an abusive relationship. No. It's, you start to notice these patterns, but we'll talk about that as we go through.
From my friend TL says, Laura, is there a connect with children growing up with physical punishment and adults becoming abusers? Some say spare the rod and spoil the child. That doesn't seem a good way to me.
Well, that's a really good question. What we know about children now is that we need to teach them emotional intelligence. In our generation, we weren't taught about what emotional intelligence was. In the previous generations, we weren't. It was all about, I'm going to threaten you. If you don't do what I say, I'm going to use a control method and I'm going to take something away from you, which makes that basically goes internally into a child, and they punish themselves and think it's something they've done. And every single abuser is, I would say 99% of the time, it's a learnt behaviour. So they would have been abused in their own way, or a need for them would not have been met. And that's the reason why they would be abusing somebody else, because of something that they have suffered in their lifetime. I guarantee it. There's always a reason behind a behaviour.
Well, if you ever watch documentaries about serial killers or anybody along those lines, or they always the vast majority of the time they seem to come from a broken home where the father was an alcoholic, or there was drug addict issues, or the abusive. All of these different things just lead to this person who's just growing up with a shell of the security and the emotional support that they should have had. So it's really tragic. Okay, shall we move on?
Okay, yeah. So is that the wheel that's come up?
I am going to bring up the wheel now. Here we go.
The wheel?
There. Oh, no, that's still... It didn't swap. There we go. There's the wheel.
Okay, so this wheel is quite sexist because it only talks about it from a female perspective, which I don't like. And it's one of the main wheels that's used, I think, because maybe it's 1 in 3 women. I don't know why it is only based on a female victim, because obviously you've got using male privilege there, which is a man and deciding what the roles are. They make the big decisions if it's a man abusing, but I think that can work both ways. It can be a female privilege. I think that can still happen, that a woman expects a man to be in a certain way and he needs to go out to work and he needs to do this and he needs to do that, if you're totally archetyping a situation. So this is one of the things I don't like about this wheel, but it is one of the mainstream ones that's used. So if we go around the wheel,
okay.
We've got, so using male privilege as one. We've got using economic abuse. So this is something where an abuser will say, oh, you don't need to go to work. You should, or if you are going to work, you only work like a few hours or something because I need you to be at home. Or if you have children, for example, that would be an easier way for that to happen. But what happens is that when that money's taken away, when that money aspect's taken away, then it means that the victim has to be codependent on the abuser. So they need to ask for money. And actually, for me, one of the biggest things that got me out of my abusive relationship was that my partner of 4 months was desperate to get on my mortgage on my house. He was desperate. He was like, yeah, well,
Mm.
we can do this as long as you sign over the paperwork. Well, we can think about this. I can let you into my life a bit more if we do this. And I was like, no way am I ever doing that. And that was really the push for me to go, no, I've got to,
This
after
is
everything I've been
this is
through.
when we were talking to Em, when she said about her partner saying, leave your job, come and work for me, I'll supply a job for you. He
Yeah,
never supplied the job. Then he controlled when she had to go out and work, where she was allowed to
yeah,
work.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a big red flag, I
yeah,
think, if someone tries to
yeah, definitely.
cash in on your cash situation.
Yeah, definitely. And then you've got using coercion and threats. So threatening to leave if you don't do what you're supposed to do. So if you so for example, I was never allowed to see my friends. And if I went to see my friends, he would just like cry. He would break down and cry and say, "Oh my God, you can't leave me. I'm devastated. I can't do anything." And then he'd be calling me, and the guilt I would feel would just be like, "Oh my God, he really needs me. He really needs me. So I need to go back to him."
Yeah.
Um, and then also it's the sort of the leaving aspect as well. It's that long separation time. Like if you've done something wrong, well, I'm not going to contact you then,
Yeah.
and then you're just thinking, oh God, what have I done? What's happened? And then it's the chase with that. So it's the threats of I'm not going to talk to you if you behave like this. And then you've got intimidation. So making the victim feel afraid. So even with a look, you can give someone a look across a room and they will know what you mean by that. It's just like a threat, something that can just a word or something that could just make somebody feel really intimidated and really scared. And something else which is on this one is abusing pets. And this is actually something that when my partner when I had to do a statement to the police, when I eventually did it about a year after everything had happened, because I needed that space, they said, was he ever aggressive to pets? And I was like, well, I had noticed like a couple of times where he'd really tease his dog, like to the point of like really winding her up,
Mm.
and it used to make me feel a bit like worried about it. And that's like one of the things that the police asked me, was what was he like with that. And I guess it's like to make someone else feel scared. It's that projection into an animal in front of an abuser to make them think, oh my God, if I don't toe the line, this is what's going to happen to me.
It's the same as people use children, obviously, don't they? The threat towards
Yeah,
people's children, same thing. Something vulnerable that's
yeah,
just gonna, yeah, coerce you into doing
yeah,
whatever they want.
yeah. And that's actually one of the points on the wheel, is using children. And then you've got emotional abuse, so like putting them down, saying that you look really rubbish. I remember for me it was I really wanted to go and do something extra with my job. I'd done really well in teaching and I wanted to go on to do something else. And he was like, you will never amount to anything. You just won't. What's the
Wow.
point? What's the point of you even trying? You're just thick, and you just think, oh my God, okay. All right, maybe I am thick. And that would get to that in terms of the gaslighting of like making you
Yeah.
think, because it's just emotional abuse. You start to take it on, and it's with those projections that you then take on those projections and start to then present them.
Mm.
And then using the isolation, so controlling what somebody does, when they do it. And you think, oh God, but how can that happen? How can you just like control how somebody does something? It's so easy, because it's that fear again. It's the fear and the coercion and the vulnerability. So it's like, for me, I was really vulnerable
Mm.
when so I'd just come up with a 10-year relationship, really vulnerable. Thought, oh yeah, I just want to reinvent myself. So of course, here comes somebody new, somebody younger than me, somebody who's like, I think is has got more get up and go about them, that they can do stuff, and I just like basically just relinquished control. I was like, okay, all right, yeah, you've got my best interest at heart. Yeah, okay, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, because it's always for us, it's always the thing, and you think it's for your best interests.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, I'll do that. I'll follow along with that until it gets to the point where, oh, you can't do
Yeah.
that.
I know what's
And
best for us. And it's like,
yeah,
oh, okay,
yeah,
do. So you know what's best for you rather than us, because I'm kind of not featured in the equation. It's just your emotions, your insecurities that are featured in this. It's nothing to do with me. It's just you just
like,
gaining control.
yeah, yeah. And then you've got minimizing and denying and blaming, which is basically not taking any ownership or passing the buck. We're saying, well, if you'd have done this, then I wouldn't have totally lost it just then, or if you'd have followed the rules, then I wouldn't have to punish you, which is what happens quite a lot at the moment with, I mean, lots of people probably feel like that with the way in which the government are. So we try and do something and then it gets pushed and pulled, and some people are probably re-triggered by that because of what's happening in the current situation, which can be quite challenging for
It'll
some
be
people.
interesting actually for anybody who's watching who's experienced anything along these lines. Do let us know in the comments if you feel you can, if any of these points that we're going through, maybe how many out of, because there's how many, eight points, I think, sort of 8 sections of that wheel we were talking about. How many of those strike a chord with you, and how many of those can you sort of recollect and remember in maybe situations you've been in? Because regarding hearing all of those, it does seem to be that when you get a situation of an abusive relationship, or when you get two people come together, if one person has a lot of emotional baggage, or one person has a lot of these issues, it does tend to be, if these things aren't checked and confronted quite early on, whoever has the most problems emotionally or whatever, mentally, whatever, it will tend to dominate the relationship, and you will see that hierarchy shift. The scales will tip, and there will just be the dominant and the submissive. And I find that if for a lot of people they let a little bit slide to start with, maybe because at the start everything's really good, and the emotion has been, emotional connection has been formed with each other. Maybe you start to feel love for each other, and by that point, because you've invested, when the things start to change, you sort of feel that you're emotionally hooked in, rather than if, say, on the first couple of dates they started showing their true colours, you might be, hang on, this is a little bit too much.
Yeah, yeah. We'll come to the roles a bit later, because I've got like a similarities and difference, and actually how they both serve each other. But we'll come to that when I've got, I just wanted to go through the there's like the 7, I think it's the next slide now, unless has anyone come forward?
Yep, Tracy's just said all of them so far. There's so many similarities in everyone's experiences I've heard since mine. The more I hear about this, I mean, I've heard people's stories for years and years, and the sad thing is, and I suppose the good thing is, because it means it's predictable, there is not that much variation. The commonalities between the way abusers work are very, very similar. It's very rare that you get someone who is so completely out there that they come up with like a new angle of attack to control. It all seems to be, as you said, those set things which pretty much dictate abusive behaviour.
But some people feel, though, if it's only a couple of those, that it doesn't class as an abusive relationship. Oh no, it's just the way it is. They don't really want to name that actually they're in an abusive relationship, because it's not physical, because they can't see it, or they believe that it's them so much that it's their fault, that the gaslighting's been so strong that they just can't see it as for what it is, for fear of thinking about how to even break out of it, how to even get out of it.
So
it's easier to stay in a relationship than it is to leave one.
especially if you have low self-esteem and you're being made to feel guilty, because I notice even with couples who aren't necessarily in an abusive relationship, nobody wants to be the person to have to break up the relationship or to be the one who leaves, because it's a really difficult thing to do and it takes a lot of strength and a lot of courage. So
it really does.
Pile all that insecurity and abuse on top, and it's surprising that anybody who's in that position actually gets out of an abusive relationship with this huge mountain to climb. I was going to ask, actually, with your relationship, how quickly did you notice changes or things that just seemed not right?
Because it was only 4 months in total, but it was about a month. It was about 4 weeks. It was about 4 weeks that I was just I felt desperate to be needed, and I was getting a lot of my needs fulfilled because there was someone that needed me.
Yeah.
And so when I saw it as a positive thing, I thought it was a positive thing that he wanted to keep me in mind and wanted to know where I was, because I'd been with somebody that, you know, we were by the end very different people. We'd outgrew each other, and that, you know, that was the way it was. But I was still very devastated because it was 10 years of my adult life that that I'd been with somebody. So it was about a month when things started to change, and sort of comments were made, and it was all to do with me changing my identity for a better future for myself. That meant I didn't need old people in my life. But what the clever thing was that it was about, still see your friends, and then you'd
thanks. That's really good of you.
I'll arrange to see my friends. But then literally, bam, the last minute, oh no, you can't go and see them. You can't go and see them because this has happened, or I really need you, or something's happened. And you're like, oh my God, you know, oh, you really need me. And so soon your friends are like, what is going on? What the hell? You're just a flake. You don't care. You just disappeared off the face. Oh, you've got a new boyfriend now. You don't care. And that's how quickly it was for me, that I ended up losing all of my friends in such a short amount of time. I had nobody other than I was able to see my parents. That was it, because this was a new life for me. That's what I needed to do.
So did you say he still allowed you to see your parents?
Yeah.
Was that because he didn't see them as a threat?
Possibly, because it was important for him to still check in with his parents. That was really important for him. Right. That he still needed to do that, and he did rugby as well. He needed to do that. The only thing I was allowed to do, that if I said I could do, was do schoolwork. I was allowed to do schoolwork because obviously being a teacher, I needed to do my schoolwork, so I was allowed to do that. But I remember having a friend come over to stay, and I actually said he might come round in the middle of the night, so I better leave the back door unlocked, and you go out the back. That if he comes round, I bolted the front door, and I had to hide this person in my house in case he came round. For fear. I was always in fear of looking out the window. Yeah. And I think this is why if people are feeling more triggered in lockdown now, there's a reason why. And I did, because you're constantly thinking, am I allowed to go out? Am I allowed to do things? Am I allowed to? Because it triggered so much for me from what had happened before, that I wasn't allowed to see my friend. One thing that happened was he came out of a class, because when I was signed off after my finger got broken, he loved that because I had to be at home. I couldn't see anyone. I was stuck at home. And my sister-in-law, my ex-sister-in-law, came round to see me. Sorry, my cat's just come to say hello.
So she's been walking around the back of you.
Oh, has she?
Yeah.
And she came round, and he called me at lunch break. Said, "What are you doing today?" I said, "Oh, I'm just my friends, come round to see me." And he said, "Tell her to F off." And he said it really loud. "Tell her to F off. She needs to go. She's from your past. She needs to go." And she heard it. And then she asked me outright, because obviously nobody knew that he'd broken my finger. And she said, he did that to you, didn't he? And I was like, no, he didn't. No, I've really got to make this decision for myself now. You're going to have to go. I've made my decision. This is my new life now. You're going to have to go. And I just sort of burnt that bridge. And he actually kept coming out of his lesson to make sure that she'd gone. He kept calling me while he was meant to be teaching. Has she gone? Has she definitely gone? Make sure she's gone. Oh, just there's a whole ream of things I could tell you about what happened. But yeah, and that when I got out of the relationship, that was the first relationship I built back up, and I told her everything, and I was honest and said what had happened, because she could see it. She held a mirror up to me, and could see exactly what I was trying to ignore and didn't want to admit to myself, because admitting that would mean that I was going to be stuck in it. I needed to just brush it off.
Yeah.
Do it.
We've had Tracy said he broke down my confidence piece by piece over time as he was introducing the manipulation. We have Atta says, hello everybody. Hello Atta, lovely of you to join us. Sticks8810 actually says hi both, and Quartz. Laura, if it's not too bold to ask, was your ex-partner remorseful or overcompensating for remorse? That's from Selena.
Was he remorseful? Interestingly, I got in touch with his ex-girlfriend because I followed him to see if anyone else was going through what I was going through.
Yeah.
And actually, there turned out to be somebody that he ended up buying a house with and things. And I messaged her out of the blue one day and just said, you don't know who I am, but this happened to me in 2012. And she said, can you call me? And I spoke to her about what had happened with my finger and stuff. And she said, you told me about that because he got arrested after it happened, but ages after, that he was really, really worried about that. He didn't tell her that it was me. He said it was like he got in a fight with somebody, a guy.
Right.
And he was upset about it. And for me, that sort of gave me a bit of okay, there was some remorse there. I don't think he was remorseful for the other stuff that he'd done.
Is it remorse though?
Just to have that little glimmer.
Is it for the outcome though? Is it the remorse? It's like a lot of people show remorse when they get caught. There's no remorse during the thing or after, like if somebody cheats, for example. When people are caught having affairs, they're remorseful because they've been caught. They seem to be perfectly okay carrying it on all in the background. So is it just because there were going to be repercussions and ramifications for his actions? That's why he's remorseful, not from his own good conscience.
And I think maybe because he got arrested for it. I don't know if she ever knew that he was arrested, but he was arrested, and he admitted it, but didn't admit it to anyone else in the whole world what he did. But at least to the police he did. Yeah. Which meant I didn't have to go to court.
Oh, good.
And that was, a bonus. So yeah, in answer to Selena's question, I think he was, but I think abusers do feel guilt because they want to try and break the cycle for themselves because they're stuck in it. They're not happy. They're not happy people. They do feel guilt because this is why the cycle continues, because they get stuck in it and they want to try and break it, but they don't know how to either because it's all they've ever known. And it comes from this place of needing to have control because they don't feel safe in themselves. But for an abuser to get help, they need to look beyond a relationship. They need to go and get some therapeutic intervention for themselves to actually get themselves out of that. And it's not for the victim's job, which is what happens is they become the fixer. They try and fix.
Is there, and we'll probably come on to this because I know one of the other slides we've got coming up talks about the roles that are played. It seems to me, and this is just my observation, that for abusers and abusees, the relationship becomes like an addiction to a substance. So the mental frame of mind that they're in, for an abuser, if, say, for example, you have a heroin addict who is craving heroin, all they can think of is that
Yeah.
time is sating the need that they feel. And with an
Yeah.
abuser, if they're feeling insecure or they're feeling threatened, all they can focus on is sating that need to feel normal and in control, because that's the only place that they feel
Yeah.
remotely secure or happy. And
Yeah.
with, I suppose, with an abusee, they do in a way become addicted to the abuser, because obviously if your self-worth and everything about you has been broken down, you become dependent on that person. I've seen people who, going back to abusers, who just do the most unspeakable things, but they if they try and break up, it's just, I've got to go back to them, because it's what they know, it's what they're used to. Change scares them. So trying to break out of that cycle is like trying to break an addiction.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's you've got Stockholm syndrome as well, which is being in love with your captor.
Yeah.
And being dependent on them, and
Empathizing with their cause, and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Should we skip on
Yes.
to the? Oh, someone got a question.
Oh, Atta says, being a woman is very hard everywhere, every time. Pressure, social roles, traditions, in or out. Maybe a meaning of life not to see ungats. If that means anything to you. Maybe a meaning of life not to see ungats mean. I'm not sure what that means, but with the role of being a woman, yes, I think we can all agree that there are certain societal pressures and historical elements that mean women are having a much harder time of it generally than men. But then I think if you can not necessarily take that aside, but break it down to the level of the individual, we are all human beings. We all have needs, wants, problems, issues, loves, hates, and we're all as you say, we are all capable of being a victim of this. Just for the fundamental flaws in our psychological makeup and the lives we lead. So it's, we can acknowledge that it's a greater issue for women, and probably some of that does tie into genetics as well, because men genetically are stronger, they have more testosterone, they use anger and shows of strength to try and control situations more. So sort of part of the DNA of being a man, unfortunately, seems that it would lead to that kind of. That's why you generally get more fights between men and men if they're out on the street and too much alcohol has been consumed. That innate primal attitude comes forward, which is not a great thing for our side of the species, unfortunately. But I think if we're going to talk honest about it, we have to talk honestly about where all these different elements come from. Do you agree, or?
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, though, it's important to know that not all men are driven by testosterone and would get into a fight, because you've got your fight, flight, freeze response. And when that triggers, some men will fight because that's part of their makeup, but other men will either freeze or fly, and they will go. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's that women are, I mean, yes, men are the stronger sex, but there are men that are still, I mean, I think it's so much harder for a man to have to come forward and say that they've been abused. I think it's so hard because of the way in which it's perceived by society. So you don't want to admit that. Why would you admit that what, a woman beating you up? It's just like, we don't accept it still in society that happens, and it's 1 in 5 men. That's pretty high.
But again, this is just a general question, is that what we know of from people coming forward and talking about it? Would there be likely to be more men out there who just aren't talking about it?
There could be. And we only will know that if more of a campaign is done. I mean, the amount of suicides there are for men compared to women is significantly higher.
Yeah.
We have to think about that, because abuse doesn't just necessarily happen in a relationship. It could be that a son is being abused by one of their parents or one of their siblings, and that's what's causing them to feel, this 1 in 5. That I don't know whether it's just the statistics within a relationship, or whether that is abuse full stop, in terms of where that abuse has come from. Because I guarantee you would probably know any man that has, if they have siblings, or if they have had a really difficult relationships with parents, that there may be some abuse in there that they've suffered.
I do know, actually, I know several men who, obviously I'm not going to name names, but when you look at obviously you're looking at their relationship from the outside, but you can see that they are with very dominant female partners. And when you speak to them about the relationship, they will say the relationship's fine, absolutely great, fine. But there will be little moments, little chinks in the armour, where you will see, for example, it may be a phone call from that partner or a situation, and you see a genuine look of fear on a person's face. And you know that things aren't right, or behaviours start changing, or this. It does seem to be this looking over the shoulder if she finds out, or I've heard them, if she finds out she'll kill me, or this kind of thing, that just general, not terror is the wrong word, but I think as soon as you start to see that in a relationship, there isn't, you should not fear your partner or be scared of, if you upset your partner, then surely in a healthy relationship where there's an open forms of communication, you can talk about things, you can address problems. But if you can see that one partner is kind of cowering, shrinking into themselves, backing away, while the other one sort of is calling the shots and domineering, would you say there's a fair chance that there is some degree, of, even to whatever level, of manipulation and abuse going on?
Well, yeah, and this is what we need to do as outsiders, is we need to be aware and we need to be vigilant of what our friends might be going through. Not to go, oh, you're in an abusive relationship, because that will go down like their balloon.
And there'll be denial. That's the thing.
They will deny it 100%. But it is just checking in with those people. It is just checking in and seeing if they need to have some respite, or if they can have it. Just knowing that there's a lifeline there, that if someone's got a bit quiet on you, just to check in with them, check that they're okay, because that's the most vulnerable place, when you feel totally isolated and alone. But it does take the victim to get themselves out of that situation for themselves. That's the hardest thing, is that you can watch it happen for years, and you just have to stand by. But it is just being supportive of those people that are going through it.
Right, let's go to that next slide then. So we have this
the next slide,
lovely colourful one.
The next slide is, that one is very similar to the other one, which is just the 7 types of abuse, which talks about physical, emotional, verbal abuse, economical, which I already said, mental abuse, like the gaslighting, sexual abuse, and spiritual abuse. And spiritual abuse, I was like, spiritual abuse. And actually, I did a assessment the other day, and it was with a family where they were very religious. And actually, what was happening was the dad would be going into church and saying, this is how you need to behave, and be a model society, this is how you are in society, this is what you should be doing, this is not what you should be doing in life, and then going home and then abusing his family. And it's sort of in the name of their religion.
I have a similar story to that. Somebody I used to know who, we're not friends now, unfortunately, but they told me the story of, they came from a family of Jehovah's Witnesses, and there was a lot of children in this family, and the vast majority of them have severe mental health problems because of growing up in that environment. And one of the things that would happen is my friend at the time, when they were at school, I think it was the mother would come to school and make sure that the person in question was not approached by other children, was not allowed to talk to any other children in the playground. I think from what they said that they eventually the parent was kind of removed from the premises.
Wow.
But yeah, can you imagine being at school and your mother stopping you from being able to engage with any other kids because they didn't believe that was right? It's a kind of us and them situation. No wonder the children have grown up with severe issues.
Yeah, and that's huge safeguarding, and I hope that the school supported that family and safeguarded that child so that he was, that they supported the family with that, because that's what leads to this behaviour when they're older. That there's trauma. So they're going to be affected by that.
These events come from, I think Atta is talking about some people do harmful things because they have no idea of love or life. These events come from also lack of empathy, a psychopathic one. Is there, because psychopaths is would you say is a whole different ball game? Or do you...
Psychopath, that psychopath means that you cannot empathise, you have no empathy for anybody, you cannot see how something is affecting somebody, and it's you are quite non-reactive in a way when you're psychopathic. But abusers don't have to necessarily be psychopaths. I mean, you probably get called a psychopath by an abuser to a victim, but it's very, an abuser can be anybody, and the same as a victim can be anybody.
That's what I was going to say.
That whole realm is it's not just part and parcel. It's just one thing.
The chances are, the chances are that most abusers are general, common or garden, normal people, whereas psychopath is I don't know if they said the psychopaths actually have a slight brain abnormality. I can't remember if there was something I read or saw, but yeah, the chances of your partner being a psychopath and an abuser, its chances are your partner, if they are an abuser, is just a normal human being with problems. Yeah,
a psychopath is mainly to do with brain development and neglect and stuff like that.
Right. Shall we? So that was our 7 types of abuse.
Yeah. So the next slide is about how an abusive relationship starts.
Sorry if this is a bit small for people to read, but we'll go through it for you.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm going to paraphrase it.
Let's do it.
You've got the building, the trust, the charming part, like M said, oh, it was the best date I'd ever been on. It was amazing. It was a brilliant date. It was fantastic. And I think it's like that when you get into that, you get that butterfly feeling when you get into a new relationship, or you get to reinvent yourself, or you get to think about what it is from your old life you don't want to have anymore and what you want to have in your new life. And it's sort of like you reinvent yourself, and you that's when you don't feel secure within yourself. If you're insecure within yourself, then you'll say, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is me, accept it. And you only get to that stage when you feel really secure in yourself, and you have a secure place, and you know who you are, and you're not going to adapt or change for anybody, because unless you feel that you need to make some compromises, but on the fundamental things, you know who you are. So if you are a chameleon and you need to change, the trust and the building of the seeds, if you like, from the abuser they will start to ask you questions about, oh, would you consider doing this or consider that? And they will know. That's sort of a testing point for them to see whether they can pursue with the relationship or not. So they'll be asking you questions which would work, whether it's the right fit, if you like. And then the abuse begins. So this could possibly be bullying, or like an agreement to say, so for me it was, oh, you should delete your Facebook. you should delete your Facebook because, it's got all your old boyfriend and everything on there. And you don't need that in your life anymore, do you? Because you've got me. And I was like, oh, to be honest, don't really want to look at stuff that's going to upset me because it's raw. Okay,
Yeah.
August, split up with my ex. September, gone back to school. Not very much, it's a very short amount of time. And it was like, yeah, okay, all right, I'll think about that. And then I didn't delete it. And it's like, oh, I thought you were going to delete it. So then it's sort of like the breaking the rules thing happens. So the abuse is like, oh, I really think you should do this. So trying to put some rules in. Don't think you should see this people. They're not good for you. I think I know you. You don't need that. And then when the rule break happens, that's when the abuse starts to kick in. So it's like there might be some confrontation going on. There might be a sort of an altercation of like, oh, well, it might be the victim. Well, for me, it was like, oh, I haven't done it yet. I don't feel ready to. Yeah, but you really should because, you don't do trust in our relationship. So it's about this compliance.
Yeah.
Are you going to comply?
There's guilt thrown in there, trying to throw you off balance.
Yeah, bit of guilt. Add a bit of guilt, season it with a bit of guilt.
Yeah. Sprinkling of guilt there.
And what happens there is that the abuser feels threatened. The abuser feels threatened that they are not secure.
And they are not gaining control of the situation either. You're not complying, you're not following what they're setting out to achieve.
Yeah. And the reason the abuser needs to do that is because they feel really insecure about you having a life outside of them. So
just a quick question, actually.
They get called
if I may.
Yeah, of course. Rather than me rambling.
Would you say the majority of abusers are intelligent abusers, as in they know what they are doing, what their aim is, what they are setting out to achieve? Or do you feel it's something that it's an emotional issue that they have that directs and kind of almost controls them like a sort of puppet master? Even because when you look at some of the things abusers do and how they manipulate, it's very clever. And is this just an inherent thing that they have, that they can do this kind of thing off the cuff very naturally? Like children can push boundaries. Children can learn and manipulate and do things. And, children, basically your aim of raising a child is to stop it killing itself at any opportunity. That's generally what being a parent is. No, you can't run out in the road. No, you can't fall off that. You can't do this. But they know how. So is that an innate primal emotional thing that we have, or are they consciously thinking through, if I do this and this and this and this, laying out the scene in front of them? What do you think it is more of?
That is a really good question. And actually, I actually was talking about this in my EMDR session last week about it being like a chessboard that they're always 2 or 3 steps ahead.
Yeah.
And I am trying to play the game. Even if I'd started the game first, I would always lose because they already had mapped it out like a game of chess. They would know how to then take the next step. And I think it's both of those things, because I think it is emotionally led too. It's about their emotional need to feel safe. That means that they have to get their need met by doing these steps.
Yeah.
It protects them, so they get their need met. But interestingly, as a victim, you play that game too. You're still playing chess. I was very, very aware of what was happening. I tried to play the game. I tried to manipulate the game back the other way to make him feel secure. I would then suddenly go to his house one night and be like, I'm here to see you because I know how much you need me to see you. And he was like, oh my God, that means so much to me. And it was just like trying to like play the game of like, yes, I've got a freedom pass for this weekend. I can do what I need to do. But I played the game to try and get what I needed, which was some freedom or some space just to calm down. But I became calculated in the way I would do things, and this is what a victim will do, is they will be on eggshells and they will think about the conversations that they will have with them to see whether or not it will trigger them, and they will be very aware about what tensions are rising, and what topics to avoid, what places to avoid, to try and get a better relationship for themselves.
Well, we're problem solvers, aren't we? That's the thing. We're problem solvers, and in a survival situation like that, where you are trying to make sure that you don't trigger you are going through all the different possible scenarios. Right, if I do this and I manipulate this and I change this and I say this, this will get on the right side. And it's horrible that it should have to get to that point. But you can understand how it does and why it does.
Yeah.
Sorry, carry on.
Yeah. That's okay. So where did we get to? So
I think we were on rule breaking.
The victim out. Yeah. So then it's sort of the wind up stage. And then the triggering then starts to happen. So once that rule's been broken, and it's how that response is from the victim that well, I've asked you not to do this, and then a consequence will happen. So right, well, I can't trust you now. I can't trust you because I've asked you to do this thing and you've now not done it. So that's it, I can't be with you. And at that point, it's like, oh my God, I'm going to lose them. I better comply. I better do what I need to do to repair the relationship. And it's at that point where that consent is given that a victim will say, I will do as you say because I don't want to be punished.
Yeah.
So the punishment happens, for not following the rules. And then it's sort of that, it's then downplayed. So both sides will say, if it comes up, oh, well, I did this because, I was a bit angry or I was upset because of something that you did. And then that might be the abuser saying that. And then the victim might say, oh, yeah, well, it's just something that happened. And the first time it happens, you just think, oh, it's just something that happened and we can get past that and we can get through this because we've only just started this relationship or whatever it is. If that excuse is given first time, then the likelihood of it happening again will then continue, unfortunately, because then guilt gets in the way. So the abuser will maybe try and charm again or do something nice or give them a bit of freedom. Oh, go and see your friend, or go and do this, go and do that, and oh, he does keep me in mind. And then the love and charm happens again, and then we go through the cycle all again.
Yep.
And that's how it all starts. So the next one, I don't know if anyone's got any questions.
I think Atta said sort of regarding what we were talking about. In these issues, we also consider the social situation with the psychological side. Yes, of course we do. Our social situation, our friends, and especially I think a lot of the time, if you're feeling unsure, and this is one of the things where even friends with the best intentions, if they bombard you into trying to say, look, can't you see what's going on? We tend to double down, don't we? Rather than no, it's all fine. It's all fine because we don't want to feel silly. We don't want to feel like we've made a mistake. We don't want to feel stupid or pushed upon. So instead of, if a friend comes from it the right way, it may be the greatest thing that can happen. But if a friend just goes in all guns blazing, then they will just sort of double down. No, everything's fine. So yeah, the social situations and everything definitely have an impact. Yeah,
and this is actually one of the comments on the red flag that I was going to talk about. So, red flags of a relationship from my own memoirs. If a relationship moves too quickly, start to be a bit worried. I would say if things are moving really, really quick, like they're moving in with a couple of weeks, or that there isn't time to breathe, you're living in each other's pockets really quickly, just be aware of that. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be abusive, but just be aware of how much time you're living in each other's pockets, whether or not you have time apart, that you're still seeing your friends socially at that time, that you have time to miss each other, because that's a really important part of that you still have your own identities. If they want to know where you are quite frequently, like they're checking up on you, they're calling you a lot, they're texting you a lot, wanting to know who you're with, things like that, sort of, it might just be like a passing thing. What's interesting about abusers is that they will ask you to be open. They'll ask a victim to be open. You need to give me all the information so that I have it, so that I feel secure. And what they do is they say, oh, you know, it'd be really good if I could like have your password for your phone, and you know, or this and that, you know, so then we're open with each other. So they'll pose it to you as a good idea, because you know, it would make our relationship stronger.
We've got nothing to hide. Yeah.
Nothing to hide. So of course, if the victim is like, okay, yeah, I'll sign up for that, they give everything away to the abuser, but the abuser doesn't reciprocate that. So then when you ask them, oh well, what about your passcode? Oh yeah, I will give it to you. A bit like M with the job situation. Oh yeah, it will happen. Yeah, I will do it. For Dan, it was like, if I got rid of my old Facebook, so silly. If I got rid of my old Facebook and set up a new profile, he would add me to it. He never did. He never added me to it. He never accepted that he was my boyfriend or anything like that. But yet he had the password to my. I never used to lock my phone. I used to just be like, yeah, I've got nothing to hide. So yeah, just go through it, whatever. But he had so much to hide. I've got something flying around my head. He had so much to hide.
That's usually the way.
It just used to really. Yeah. And I just remember being really paranoid, thinking, what is he trying to hide from me? What is it that he's trying to hide? And I knew that, but I didn't stop. I then put a passcode on my phone, and he's like, why have you put a password on it now? And I was like, because you're not being open with me. And then that caused like a big argument and stuff. But I didn't back down on that, and I kept my passcode on it. And then my phone would just disappear somewhere, and I'd try and find it. Where's my phone gone? Oh, it's there. And I'd go there. Oh, it suddenly magically appeared. You know, just like random things like that. Accessing your social media account without permission, that just shouldn't be a thing. That should be your private space for yourself, and that should just be for you. You don't have to share that with anyone, because it's a bit like a diary. That's your choice of what you want to do with that. How you should be spending your time, telling you who should be your friends, who you should hang out with, taking money or accessing your bank account, asking you to change your lifestyle choices. But one of the biggest thing is this: if any problems, this is what an abuser will say to a victim: do not share any of our problems with anybody else. They are private. They are private. And when that happens, you're trapped. You are stuck. You cannot get out. Because as soon as you consent to that, you cannot talk to anyone, and you are alone. And it's a horrible, horrible place to be. I'm talking from experience.
No, I was discussing this with Carrie, actually, and we were talking about how when they act a certain way behind closed doors, and I've seen like partners will, like a partner might have said something in the presence of that person, and they've given them the daggers. They're like, why'd you say that? Why'd you say that? That makes me out to look like a complete psychopath. It's like, because deep down you know that's exactly what you are. If you say you insult your partner behind closed doors and call them, you know, really degrade them. If they say, oh, my girlfriend called me, or like you're talking in a conversation and the partner says, well, you called me this the other night, and she's like, why did you say that? You made me look like I'm a right arsehole. It's like, because you know that's what that behaviour, if you're worried about other people seeing you as an arsehole, it's because you know that behaviour is a real arseholey behaviour. So as you say, you're just trying to control it.
Yeah, and sometimes for a victim, that might be the platform they need to say it in front of everyone so that they know. Because as we know from what Carrie was saying, to the outside world, I mean, my abuser was a teacher, for Christ's sake. He was a teacher. He was well loved by everyone. The whole school loved him. He was amazing. And yet, coming forward, or not coming forward and saying, you know, I've been abused by that man, and he's teaching you. And you just think that's really hard. But to consent to go, oh yeah, actually, yeah, problems shouldn't be shared with anyone. They should just be kept to yourself. That you know, we shouldn't share that. It's just the final nail in the coffin, really, of you just feeling so isolating and not knowing who you can talk to, for fear, because if you've given away all your freedoms, if he's got the password to your phone, if you can access your emails, if you can get onto your Facebook, if you can access any of that stuff, that means that he's constantly watching you. And it's like Big Brother state then. You're then stuck. You cannot do anything. You cannot say anything. You're mute. You're mute and you can't say anything because you've given that permission to somebody who's going to abuse that. And that happened to me because I remember talking to somebody and they'd gone onto my Facebook. He waited ages. He waited about 3 or 4 weeks and suddenly just sprung it on me. Who's this person? Oh, just a friend. When did you last talk to them? Oh, I can't remember. Oh, yeah. Okay. And then it would be eked out. I felt like I was in court, and I was like, and then I was like backtracking. I'm like, I don't know. Just a friend of mine. But why? How do you know him? Why were you talking to him? And I'd suddenly remembered, oh my God, he's got onto my Facebook and he's gone onto my account and that's how he knows.
I've been on the receiving end of that with like a text message pop up. Who's that? And as soon as someone says, who's that? It's that taking interest. Now, it could be that they've just seen the name of oh, who's that? Could be just part of a conversation. But you can generally tell at that time that there's a little trigger in there, and then it's the probing question. Why do you need, if they think to themselves, why do I need to know who this person is? Because in that moment, if you've come out with that statement, you've already there's a fear that's already been installed in your head, and it's probably, who is this person? What relationship have they to my part? And they're feeling threatened. So that is why you get the accusory. Who's that? Well, you've never spoken about them before. That's a good one. Yeah, you've never mentioned them before. Well, how long have you known them? Yeah. Why are they messaging you? Is one. And it's just those little elements that just test the waters, just to see whether it's worth pouncing on and whether this is a threat that needs to be crushed, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really hard. So, we're just aware of time. I don't know how long we've got. But,
we have as long as you are happy.
Okay.
This is a great conversation. So.
Okay, good. All right, just glad I'm not boring anyone.
No.
Gaslighting is something
we should be further on, shouldn't we, by now?
Yeah. That one was just the red flags.
Yep. Gaslighting picture, everyone. There you go.
Yep. So. Gaslighting is basically to manipulate a person into questioning their own sanity. So it's using your own fears against you. So, for example, weight, saying, "Oh, I had an issue with weight," and it would always be, "Oh, you're too." I mean, I lost a lot of weight when I came out with the 10-year relationship. And I lost even more when I was with the abuser. And he was always like, "You're too skinny," because he had issues with his own weight. So it was, again, a projection. Like, you're disgusting, you're too thin, you're that, or that person looks better than you. Oh, look at that person, they look fit, don't they? So it's like playing on your insecurities. Something else we spoke about was knowing you, suggesting the abuser knows, I don't think you would do that, would you? So I think I know you better than you know yourself. And that happens a lot. And I have to sit in meetings sometimes where I'm working with a family and I see someone of the family say that to someone else. And I'm just, it's really hard when you see someone manipulate like that and take control over a situation where it's that consent again. They're consenting to, you do know me better than I know myself. Yeah, take the lead on this. Normal changes, so if they've suddenly changed something, or it's normal to not talk to your ex-partner, it's normal to do this, it's normal to do that, and actually my partner now is friends with all of his ex-girlfriends, and I remember being like, what, why are you talking to them, why would you, that's not normal. And it's like, well, it is in my life and that's what I do, and it took me a long time to adjust that, but actually I felt it was really important to. But if it's something that makes them, an abuser, feel insecure, then they put those changes in to make them feel more secure about their relationship with you.
Yeah.
to make it feel better.
Me and Carrie had this issue, and so we've openly talked about it. It's no secret that when we first got together, she had a big problem with the amount of women I was friends with, and that I was still friends with a couple of exes and people I'd slept with. Now, because for Carrie, she came from a place where generally after these relationships they'd ended badly, so there's no need to be friends with these people, because in her eyes these are sort of toxic entities, or there's the fear that maybe there's something still attached to those people, you know. But for me, that is just how my life is. If I've been intimate with someone and we've parted on good terms, to me that is a bond that we share. It doesn't mean that by being friends that you are just going to strip off and jump into bed at any particular moment. It just means that you've shared an experience together. You will always have that experience, and if it was a good experience and a positive one, then there is no reason why you can't carry on a friendship, because like any relationship and friendships, they change over time, they become different things. They are not what they were at that time. So
and it's about that need that she feels. If from what I know of Carrie, when she spoke about the fact that she'd been cheated on, and when you have been cheated on, and suddenly you've got a new partner that's got an ex-girlfriend that they're close to, you automatically would think, oh my God, I'm inferior to them. They're better than me. They're gonna and the fear then will strike, and you think, oh my God, I'm going to lose this person because this is what's happened to me in the past. This is a triggering a previous trauma.
Which is one of the things that when she dealt with the experiences that were going on in our relationship were taking her back to the traumatic instances of her past. There was direct emotional links. So it was once she dealt with them, it completely changed her outlook on how she saw them, and it sort of took the power away from it, which was amazing.
It's incredible. Other things, questioning your sanity. You're paranoid, you're a psycho, you're saying things like that to somebody, like you're mental. I remember getting really triggered by my ex saying to me, like, just lying in bed, and he was like, what do you think of porn? I was like, oh, I don't know, if you want to watch it. And he was like, what? He turned the light on and he was like, what do you mean about that? And I was like, I don't really care, to be honest. I was like, I just want to go to sleep. And this kept going on and on. This is hours and hours of him just talking to me. And in the end, I ended up becoming physical with him because I needed to go to sleep, and I was getting so triggered by him. I was like, just shut up. I want to be able to go to sleep. I can't stand this anymore. And it was me. You're a psycho. You just attacked me for no reason. And it's that blame thing, because I got so triggered, and that triggering, that episode really impacted when I had children, of getting woken up in the night, and that really impacted how I managed that, because I was totally re-traumatized. Every time somebody, one of my children would wake up, I would instantly be like, oh my God, what has happened, and be really like in a really heightened state. And that's because of those incidents that would happen so frequently. And so making you doubt yourself, making you think that you don't know yourself, or you're not making the right thing. That psychologically, like leaving a bit of a drawer open. I know somebody that this happened with them, that they just leave the drawer slightly open in the house, and they were like, oh, I didn't leave it open, you must have done, and sort of adding to that paranoia of like, well, why would that have happened? Like with my phone wasn't there, and then suddenly it was, and I was like, what? I saw I put it there, and then suddenly it appeared, and I was like, well, how did that happen? Forgetting. So, the abuser's got a selective memory about what's happened. No, that didn't happen like that. It didn't happen like that at all. It must have happened a different way. No, that definitely didn't happen. I definitely didn't do that to you, or that didn't happen, or you didn't say that. Making you lie, and this is a really hard thing, because when you're a victim, you lie, and when you're an abuser, you lie, and you both lie, because you're both lying to protect yourselves. So that happens in both ways, and it's motivated it's motivated by the stress of the caused by the abuser. So you'd lie about where you'd go, who you'd see.
Yeah.
And I used to lie, yeah, I'm doing work at the weekend when actually I was, going out having a good time.
A lot of people
Because I
lie for
needed that.
self-preservation.
Yeah, yeah, because I was just in fear of what the
Yeah.
implications are going to be. Causing you to stay silent, which is what I was just saying, about that mute. When
Mm-hmm.
you give that permission to say we won't share it, then you just, because of the habit and the trauma, you just become a mute, making the victim change their mindset and question their own sanity. So when it's projected, this is something that we look at in therapy, is you've got something called transference and countertransference. And when something is being projected into you, and you then start to, it's also known as projective identification. So what happens is, if you are thrown like you're crap, you're worthless, you're a complete, you can't do anything with your life, you're terrible, you're not going to do anything, you then start to project that and start to identify as that for yourself. You also will start to maybe mirror what you're seeing in the other person. So you'll start to behave the way they behave, similarly
Okay.
to what we were saying earlier about like the roles being,
Yeah.
well, what am I trying to say?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
that project this the projective side that's coming out, that you then will go out and you will believe everything that you are being told by the person you supposedly love,
Yeah.
because it must be true if they're saying it to you.
Yeah.
It's like watering a plant, that if you, they did an experiment where they had two plants in a school and they held abuse at one plant and they nurtured another one, and you should see the two plants, like the one that they abused, like verbally, was just like disheveled, whilst the
Oh,
other one was blossoming. I
poor,
know.
poor plant.
How impactful is that? Yeah,
I feel really
it's
bad.
really sad. It's
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah. And that's
The
a very
poor
simple
plant.
organism. If a simple organism wilts under that kind of abuse, then you think what a complex organism with a complex brain is going to suffer with.
Exactly. It's huge. And making a victim depressed, so giving the victim
Mm-hmm.
codependence to the abuser once all the self-worth has been taken away, and you're just a depleted mess. So once you're in an abusive relationship, you then have the cycle of abuse, which is the next slide,
Yep. Let's go for it.
and that
There we go.
just goes round and round and round and round and round. So you have the tension, everything builds up, you then have an incident where it's either a verbal, emotional, physical, sexual, anger, blaming, stuff happens, and then it's the reconciliation. And this is what happens, is that when the reconciliation happens, that is when the abuse starts to happen again, because it's been forgiven and it's been forgotten. And it's like a repair, if you like.
Yeah.
It's like a rupture that happens, and then you repair it, and then you get a calm and all's forgotten. But then that tension starts to build again, and it's really about trying to break the cycle at the before the incident happens,
Yeah.
of actually saying, I'm not going to consent to this, I am actually going to walk away from it, and I'm actually going to move. I don't like the way you're treating me, I'm going to actually remove myself. And that, first of all, you've got to recognize that you're being abused. That's number one. That's the number one thing you have to do, and that some people can't even get there. Then you have to think about how you're going to exit and how you're going to plan, how you're going to get out. And then you actually have to get out, because if you can't get out, or you do get out, the thing with an abuser is the door is always open. The door will always be open. And this is why victims find it really difficult to get back, or to stay,
Yeah.
to go, because they could just drop them a message and be like, I'm still thinking about you. And a victim can send that to an abuser. That's the door wide open. They'll come back. The charm will happen. I can change. I can do things
Yeah.
differently. This is why it continues for a longer period of time, because they will always be needed. They will always be needed by an abuser. So it's so easy to go back to them. And this is why they get so stuck.
Well, this
in
is
this cycle.
sort of ties in with I think what Atta is sort of saying, sort of in life for people who are sort of feeling like, she said, feeling like a monkey from one tree to another. Every issue is going on the same place. Who am I? Where did I come? Where will I go? What is my target in life? For people who do feel like that, who are very susceptible to, and I think this ties in with so many things about what you said, especially with the red flags. Now, for the people I know who are in abusive relationships, they, because of their background, because of their upbringing, they haven't had sort of great emotional support, great security as children, so they haven't grown up with that nature and nurture structure, which gives them the strength to sort of come into their own with a degree of strength and a shield, because life is tough. Life does not, as we've talked about before, life does not owe you happiness, wealth, prosperity, a good long life. Life is just what it is. It's an existence, and whatever gets thrown at you during it, you have to kind of make the best of. So if you grow up and you're taught, if you're nurtured and you're praised when you do good things, told off when you do bad things, you're given good morals, all of this counts to you, hopefully making better decisions for yourself later in life. If you haven't got any of this, and you're in that state where you feel worthless, you don't know up from down, you don't know what's right or wrong, and then somebody comes into that life and it's like, baby, I am the answer to all your problems. You're going to be like, oh my God, thank you. You are going to latch onto that.
Yeah.
And this is when you were talking about the red flags. If you do have low self-esteem and you find and this is not just abusers but abusees, if you find that you're one of these people that as soon as you meet someone, you're like, this is the rest of my life planned out, you are ripe for abuse. Because if you are that emotionally dependent on other people to give you happiness, you are likely to take so much shit from people that you would not believe. And as you say with abusers, if they, after 2 days of being with you, tell you that they love you and you're the most amazing thing in the world, they obviously have that emotional dependence as well, but in a kind of in the dominating side rather than the sub side. So both people involved are have emotional problems.
Exactly right, and that actually leads to my next point, which is the roles of a victim and a perpetrator.
Let's do that. That's a segue that I wasn't planning on.
That was lovely.
Thank you. I keep. By the way, people, if I leave these things up for too long, please let me know, because while we're engaged in the conversation, I can't always see what's on my screen as I'm talking to Laura up here. So if I just leave a page on for too long, please just say, Mike, take the page off. So I shall try and remember we've got it on there for a little while.
So what I've done here is I've looked at both sides of the same coin, which is an abuser needs to take control to feel secure.
Yep.
And a victim needs to relinquish control to feel secure. So that's how that comes together. One person needs the control, one person needs to let go of the control to feel, and they both need that to feel secure. And that common trait is that they have really low self-esteem, both of them, that they both need each other to prop each other up. Then an abuser will project, which I said about earlier, will project insecurities onto a victim, and the victim will take on the projections of the abuser but try and fix them. So they feel like, oh, this is my role, I'm a fixer, I've got to fix this person, they really need fixing. And what the common trait there is fear of being alone and being not good enough, because the abuser will not feel good enough because they have to project it. They can't own it. They can't say, I feel worthless, I feel crap. They can't own that for themselves. They don't feel good enough, so they have to project it onto someone that they know can hold it. can hold that role on. And that's why a victim feels important, because they are helping, they are a helper, they will help the abuser to feel better. So then the next part is, an abuser will always keep a victim in mind, and the victim will always keep the abuser in mind. So they're both keeping each other in mind all the time. And that is because they are in need of a secure attachment. They need to feel needed, both of them. And that's, again, why that works.
Yeah.
Because they're both getting something from each other. But both of them will be probably cautious, hypervigilant, and triggered most of the time, have trust issues, probably have a history of a toxic or abusive relationships in both of their pasts for this to happen. Now, for me, I'd never been in an abusive relationship before, but I was incredibly vulnerable because I didn't know who I was in terms of my whole identity, because I split up with somebody after a very long, for my teens into my early 20s. So for me, and that's the thing, I wasn't aware of what abuse looked like. I had no idea what abuse looked like. It was something that I was sort of didn't think it could actually happen. To me, because I thought I would be aware of it. I know I'm strong, I'm bolshy, I can stand up for myself, but actually it's that vulnerability, fear and coercion that means that you get into it. So why does a domestic abusive relationship work? So both the victim and the abuser are in need of a secure attachment, meaning that they feel secure within the relationship. The abuser feels that this will be achieved by controlling the victim, making them believe that they feel safer in the relationship by doing so. And the victim feels that they are helping the abuser feel less vulnerable if they comply with the control. The victim gets gratification for helping the abuser to feel more secure and continues to comply. And that's how it works.
So much of this is I've seen all these elements so much just in the world around me, of people I know, experiences I've had, and I'm really lucky that I suppose in a way I found myself quite a long time ago. I know what I want. I feel I know what I'm worth. So I'm lucky that I have that. I've still been treated like shit in relationships. I've been cheated on. I was manipulated. But luckily I had that strength to grow from it and learn from it. And if I see it now, I confront it. When me and Carrie first started going out, when her problems were brought into the equation, I had to stand my ground on a lot of things. But because of that also made her confront her own issues. Whereas if I had been...
You gave it back to her.
Yeah. So whereas if I'd been more compliant and, as you say, taken those things on, her issues then would have basically sort of amplified and restricted more and more things with me. And that's the thing. Do you think it is, and this is an odd thing to say, but because like Carrie, was completely the abused in her previous partnership. But as you say, you start to take on certain traits and certain elements, and
you can be either a victim and an abuser in the same breath. You can be both, because I was abusive towards my ex-partner physically because I was triggered. And I own that, because I needed to do that, but I was seen as the bad one in that situation because I needed to do that to tell him to basically get out my face and to listen to me, because I wasn't being heard. But what happens is that you enable a victim, an abuser, if you take on that role, and you enable an abuser. So if, for example, with you didn't enable Carrie to continue with that behaviour, you said, no, this is yours, this is your stuff, I'm going to help you get through it, and this can't continue, because being a victim means that you can't have excuses for your behaviour. Same as an abuser, you can't have excuses for your behaviour. You have to sort your own self out. And You can't say as a victim, oh well, I you know, I'm like this because I've been abused. Yeah, that's a reason, but you still have to take ownership of what's happened to you to better yourself, because it's you that you're doing it for, nobody else.
Why do you think there's that thing that people feel the need to change people to suit them? This is something I've always found very odd, and this was when speaking with Carrie, when we had to sort of, you know, it got down to a point where we were in danger of breaking up, and I said to, and I think I've mentioned this on the stream before, I said, the way we are working at the moment is just not going to work. If you, unless things change, and this is where that delicate balance comes in, because if a person's saying things need to change to suit me, then you've got a problem. But it was things need to change, but I'm willing to work with you if you want to change for yourself. If you're happy, and this is where we've talked about things, I said, if you're happy being who you are, and the way you are acting and everything is how you want to be, then I can't be a part of that, because it's not my place in life to say you need to be like this, like this, like this, like this, because that's what I think you should be. That's not my role. My role is if we can work together with our differences and our similarities, and they can sort of go roughly in the same path. They may kind of do that, a little shimmy dance occasionally, but if they're generally going in the same direction, that can work. But if like one person's gone off there and you're like, no, you've got to come back here and be alongside me all the time, that's manipulation.
Yeah. And you need 3 things to make any relationship work, whether it's with colleagues, whether it's with your family, whether it's with your partner. 3 things: communication, trust, and compromise. I learnt those things very early on in my life, that those are the things that made a relationship, and I compromised on my own happiness.
But is that where compromise becomes sacrifice?
Yes, yeah, because compromise needs to be both sides. It can't just be one. You have to meet in the middle. You have to compromise that if it's one rule for one person, it has to be fair for the other person. There has to be that balance there, because then that's where you just fall down, and that hierarchy comes back in.
Yeah, I called it in our relationship the level playing field, because if you have like one person's allowed to do something, the other person isn't allowed to do something, then that's hypocrisy. And immediately that sets a really bad precedent for any future going forward.
Yeah. It's difficult.
It is. So
there's only a couple more points.
Yep.
So if you watching this are thinking, right, I think I'm in an abusive relationship, I don't know if I am, but I think I am, what do I do? I thought sounds really silly. I was like, right, because people were like, do you think you could be in an abusive relationship? I was like, no. So I went and I did an online quiz, and there's a really good one on Psych2Go, which I can put the link onto, which asks you questions that you may not think is abuse. So, has your partner ever made you feel afraid? Have you ever changed something about yourself because you're afraid that your partner might not say, or what they might say or do? Do you often worry about talking to your partner about something that's bothering you? So these questions are just geared up for you to answer yes or no, and then it will give you a probability. And for me, it was like, yes, this is an abusive relationship. This was about 6 weeks into the relationship I did this, and I was like, right, don't really know what I'm going to do about this. I know I'll try and fix him. I'll try and fix all this stuff. I knew it was happening. I tried to fix. Didn't get me anywhere. It got me in a worse situation where I was just totally isolated. And I think because of my finger getting broken, that was just really difficult, because I gave him permission to get away with it. I didn't say to anyone that it had happened, and that sort of finalized things for me. But if you know, or you think you might be in an abusive relationship, it might be worth doing an online quiz just to see. And there are links there of people that you can get into contact with. And when you want to break out of a relationship, you have to do it when you are ready to, and you may not ever be ready to, but it's finding a confidant, finding someone that you can talk to that makes you feel completely safe. And that may be an impossible challenge, because I only opened up once I was out of the relationship. I didn't
Mm.
tell anybody until I was actually out, because I knew that I could then. I had the permission. He wasn't in my life anymore. He wasn't going to come back.
Yeah.
And so it might be that a victim needs to get themselves. It's so hard at the moment because of lockdown and because of not being able to move. And thank God your friend had you with what he went through, because for so many people they just are living with it and they're stuck in it and they can't get out. Um, so for a victim to find a place of refuge if they can, and for them to stop consenting, and that's a really difficult one, because it's it's no, and this is one of the most challenging things. I had a session with somebody just before I came on today, and she feels really angry with herself that she consented to it, that
Mm.
she gave permission. She's like, why did I do that? And now she's in the punishment stage, because it's like a grieving process that you have to go through.
Yeah.
And she's in the anger stage with herself at the moment, that she's punishing herself and blaming herself for what's happened. And I was like, you need to know that every single person in that relationship, whether that's the wider field or just the two of you, there's a role that's being played by both of you, and you're both playing it. And it's just understanding what that role is, and if you don't want to be in that role anymore, to try and find ways to get yourself out of that role. um, and for an abuser, if somebody thinks, oh my god, actually I'm abusive, I'm controlling, I don't feel secure in my relationship, and I do put these demands on to people. Relate is an amazing organization that helps perpetrators and victims work together and apart, to work through, because their stuff, so that they
Mm.
can be honest and open with. And that's really what it is. It's naming what is the most difficult thing, especially for an abuser to name, I've been abusive, is so hard for somebody. But there is support out there, and it's not met with any judgment either. They're there to help, because there's a reason behind those behaviors that are being explored. And actually, when I left teaching, I called everybody into a big boardroom: the head, the deputy head, my union representative. I had a big screen that showed all of the operations that I'd had with my finger, put it on there. I'd written a letter, and I asked that and I had the police statement in front of me, and I said, I want you to give this teacher, the abuser, some therapy. I want you to give him some therapy, so that this does not ever happen again, so that he has some way of getting out of this, so that it's not going to be repeated along the line.
Mm.
Um,
It's very noble of you.
but then, unfortunately, the school said they couldn't do that, because it was my word against his. Even though he'd admitted to what happened and he was arrested for it, they
Right.
couldn't do that because it's my word against his. And that was just like, I tried, I
Yeah.
tried, and that's all you can ever do. And what I did, because I couldn't help him, I then got in touch with his ex-girlfriend, and we're now friends. We're now
Oh,
friends, and
excellent.
we talk, and we shared our our journey together, and I've helped her by saying that she's not alone
Mm.
in what she went through, and I would understand what she'd been through. But I can't keep going on, as much as I've wanted to, keep going out and rescuing all these women from his clutches. It's not what I can do, but I can help in other ways. Hence why I do what I do now.
Yeah, I think I used to be. The whole rescuing thing was it. It's a tricky thing, because if you're the kind of person who wants to help people, you it's something I learned. I used to be very much if someone was going through something, I would dash in and try and solve all of the problems. and then you would find that you'd go in, you'd try and help them all out, and then it would just turn around and bite you in the arse again, because you find that it's at that moment your intentions may be great again, but you're trying to change people because you think that the situation needs it, and it may well do, but it's not up to you to do it. As you say, it's up to the person who is involved in it, and you can try and open their eyes to the various avenues that they can go down, or to try and help themselves, but you cannot, unless it is literally someone's life is in danger and you are going to get them out before they get killed or something like that. There are times when action does need to be taken. But for the most part, especially with like moral support and things like that, and I suffer with this because it's so frustrating. I've had an ex-girlfriend who was a friend of mine, and she was in a fairly abusive relationship. And it was very interesting to see the dynamics of this, especially how when they did finally break up, the different avenues that he would do. He would be abusive, but then he'd try and be sweet. Then he'd try and come in from a different angle. When that wasn't working, he would try and get angry again. And it was trying to find that chink in the armour that he could wheedle his way back in with. And I got to a point where I was so angry at her. And I ended up shouting at her, which I regret, because it was not. But I was so frustrated, in literally in my eyes, watching her.
But it came from a place of love, didn't it?
But it still wasn't right for me.
You loved her enough to care.
But it's like watching someone walking into a wall and going, "Ow, that really hurt. Ow, why does this hurt? Ow, and just watching them do it over and over and over again. And it's understandable to get to that point where you're like, I don't know how much of this I can watch you go through. Same as anybody with an addiction or anything like that, watching somebody hurt themselves over and over again. It's such a hard thing to do when you care about them. But and sometimes it's what is for people who are getting to that point. What advice would you give where they're trying to support someone who's in this situation, but they're finding it so hard watching the victim go back to it again and again?
They need to have a confidant that they can talk to about, because it's probably bringing up something in them. Because if say for your role is being a fixer for somebody and wanting to do the right thing, and your role is not fulfilled, it's that acceptance part that you're doing your best. So you need to go and talk to somebody about how you feel about that, because you'll then hold all that stuff for them of you just wish that you could see them out of it. So it's really important that you go and talk to somebody about how your concerns about somebody, that you're airing it, because otherwise you'll just go mad.
I had to in the
feel
end
more frustrated and fall out.
It was one of those things where with some people I had to end up distancing myself from them, because they also then became to depend on me. I was in a situation where people would almost put themselves in these negative situations because they knew I would come running to help. And again, it's that emotional dependency that they have. And I had to learn the hard lesson of realising that it's not up to me to cure them, to solve their problems. I can be there, I can advise, I can offer support, but there has to be that cut-off.
And for you, that is another form of abuse. You're being abused because you're expected to drop everything for them whenever they need you to. So it works that other way, that it's just role reverse then, because they're getting into these situations knowing that you're going to come and rescue them. So that control is taken away from you. You're consented, and then you're going to rescue them. I think that's what happens.
That's a good point where we could say, I think, that as human beings, if you find that you are in whatever situation, whether you are an abuser, whether you're an abusee, whether you find that you are, as some people say, you're very needy, or you're very clingy, or you're constantly needing reassurance, and if you feel that you're a kind of person who has these, I don't know if it's fair to call them negative traits, but so let's say traits that can negatively impact on your happiness and well-being, because constantly needing affirmation from other people, needing a lot of emotional support is going to make you struggle in life, isn't it, as a person? And if you suffer with these things,
Yeah.
then it is worth, even before you get in a situation where you might get in a abuse, to seek help, have therapy, gain some confidence and strength in yourself, so that if you do come up against this kind of thing, that you are better prepared. Because I think there's so many people who, even if they're not in an abusive relationship, could so easily fall into one, just because they've grown up in a bad situation where they don't have the tools in life to sort of be able to deal with things without latching on to other people and then being in a vulnerable position.
Yeah.
If any of that made sense.
Yeah, and it definitely. Yeah. And like I said, it can happen to anyone. Nobody is immune.
No.
And it's very difficult, but it's recognizing it first, and then just putting the feelers out to people of how you're going to plan your exit strategy of what you need to do. And for me, I knew that I didn't want my ex to get my house. That was number one, because I knew once that had happened that I would be stuck, and I was not giving that up. And I needed to I needed to see my therapist. So I organised to see my therapist about how do I get out of this relationship. I had 2 sessions. I had one where I spoke about what was happening in the relationship, and the next one was like, I need to get out. How am I going to do this? And I worked through it with her of what I was going to do, because obviously I had to then work with him for another year at school.
Yeah.
That was tough, and that was what led me to leaving. But for better things, because I really enjoy my job now, and it's led me on to better things. But for people that have children, oh my God, I can't even imagine what that must be like for those people.
I know family members who have partners who unfortunately have had an abusive relationship, and where that abuser, obviously they have children with them, and the manipulations and the ways they will try and control still that person via the children. It's sadistic how evil some people can be, and the lengths they will go to just to make your life a misery.
Yeah, and they are not ever thinking about the child.
No, God,
ever.
no.
It's all about them, and that's just the most devastating thing. And that's why I picked them up in therapy, because they then start to repeat the cycles, because it's learnt behaviour again, and so it continues, and then it needs to be broken. But there we go. Right,
how would you like to wrap this up? I mean, I think we've covered a hell of a lot of ground here. I've really enjoyed.
We have covered everything.
I've really enjoyed it. It's been an absolutely fantastic conversation with you. So thank you for that.
Oh, thanks.
Hello, Pusscat.
I did rabbit on a bit.
No,
hello, yeah, she's back again.
All of it was. I feel all of it was relevant. All of it had some. Oh, TL says excellent discussion. Oh, TL's been here the whole time. That's because he's just a bloody.
Oh, wow.
He's a bloody good guy.
Hardcore.
Yeah, he's a good lad. But no, I think every point there's been people are going to be able to relate to this in lots of different ways. Oh, Tracy's still here as well. Wow, so we've actually got people here the whole time.
Wow.
So thank you very much.
Amazing. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
But if anyone ever wants to get in touch with me to talk about, there's some great places in Essex that offer support. I can't find it now. I'll put them in the links below of different places that you can look into for yourself. For anybody that is going through this, either side, think about some therapy, counselling, any type of therapy that you can do, talking therapy, CBT, EMDR, which is amazing. all of those things will help you along your journey to know, because it's about, the thing is, you have to think about your self-worth first.
Yeah,
You have to think about
absolutely.
yourself, because you are the only the only person you're in control of is yourself in life, and you need to look after yourself. And if you don't, then you will just crumble away. And it's only when you get to your lowest ever days, where you feel like nothing is worth living anymore, that you find a fight, or you have something that will push you to want to live. And if you have that,
Yeah.
that's when you need to strike and go, right, I've got to get out of this.
Yeah.
For myself.
If you can get out before, then
and there are people there
yeah,
to help.
because I know there's sometimes that people, when they get to that point, and it's horrible, people die in these situations. Domestic abuse and violence kills people, and it doesn't take much. It can be a push, a shove, a fall, a bang your head. It can be anything. And if there is no need, there is no need for violence in any relationship, from a man to a woman to a woman to a man. I've never ever got to the point where I've wanted to even raise my hand to a partner. If you're getting to the point where you are, if it's so toxic that one of you is wanting to hit the other, I think you're possibly past the point of no return, and people need to get out quickly. So for you,
and you're being triggered at that time.
Yeah.
That you're never ever going to be thinking rationally at that time, because your fight flight response has kicked in, and that is going to take over anything. So you're not in any control when that kicks in, because you're just going to lose it.
Yeah. Right, my lovely.
And I was going to say as well, sorry.
Carry on.
I was just going to say that you were saying about death and killing, that it could be a push, but it could also be suicide as well. And that is a big factor that can happen. Sorry to put a dull tone at the end there, but it is,
it's all part of it.
Suicide ideation is massive. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just reach out if ever you can to whoever you can.
Yeah. An abusive relationship, it does not have to be that way. Your life does not. If you are in one, this is imploring anybody out there, if you are in one, your life does not have to be what it is. It can be changed. You don't have to be. You just have to find a way that you can get. And as Laura stated, there are many places that you can go. There are people who can help. It takes probably the most guts that you will ever be able to summon in your entire life, but it can be done. And with help, with therapy, you can change yourself, learn from mistakes that have been done onto you. You can change who you are as a person, so that hopefully you'll never ever be in that situation again. You don't have to be this person for your whole life.
There is life after abuse.
Yes.
Definitely.
Also, Tracy said, I came close to being hospitalised. Terrible experience. Yeah, I think I told the tale of, and I'll make this last thing, I was go off again, but of someone I met who showed me all the bruises all over her body, and she told me how she'd been raped, she'd been hospitalised several times. He'd nearly killed her on multiple occasions. Luckily, she got out. She was very lucky to do so, because any one of those times could have been her last time. So when I did see that she'd got out and she was better and she was a different person, it was like, thank God, because it could have been her funeral so easily.
Yeah.
Right, everybody.
But what's hard though, sorry, I keep talking.
No, go.
I was just going to say, it's harder. It's harder when somebody's not being physically abused. It's harder to prove that you're being abused.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it more difficult for people, is because there's no physical signs of it. People don't know. So it makes it harder for them to come forward, because it's their word against the other person. So just to know that any abuse, that's why that quiz is so important that I did, any abuse is abuse, and it's so important to know what all of them are.
Especially the one you put up, the 8. I'm just going to quickly pop it up again, just so people can see. This the physical sexual violence one, the using intimidation, using emotional abuse, using isolation, minimising, denying and blaming, using children, using male privilege. Again, but that can work both ways. Using economic abuse, using coercion and threats. All of these kind of things, and it doesn't necessarily have to be with a partner. It could be a boss. You get abuse at work. You get a boss who tries to manipulate you, control you, use power over you, make your life a living hell. I worked at a place where there was a boss. It's so sad, and this is just a very, very quick story. She was a proper kind of matriarch of this area in the factory, and she ruled with an iron fist, and all the women were terrified of her, to the point where she would just little digs and little threats, and they were all walking on eggshells. And she tried it with me, and because I'm like, well, I work here for you. What power do you actually think you have over me? And then she was nice as pie. And they were like, yeah, you've really got her wrapped around your little finger. I said, no, it's because I know that the illusion of the power she has is an illusion.
Yeah.
She cannot do anything to me. If she said one time that she said, "Oh, talk to me," or something like, "I'll break your finger," and I literally put my hand on the table, went, "Go on then," and she was just like laughed and just walked off. And it's just so ridiculous, but that people think that people have that power and dominion over them. It's all a lie. It's all a fallacy. A person can only give you abuse if you take it. They can hit you in the face. There's not much you can do about that. But if they try and control you, they can't control you unless you allow yourself to be controlled.
Yeah.
But that comes from a place of strength. And if people don't have strength, then they're easily manipulated.
Yeah.
Right. Tracy said, yep, same here. I've come out the other side and I'm happier than ever now. Excellent. That is what we like to hear.
Amazing, Tracy.
Right, my lovely. It's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So can't wait to see you in the real world again soon.
Oh, me too. Be great.
I know. We all just want big hugs. That's all we want. Just a nice big cuddle. One day.
Be lush.
Yeah, we'd say we need just bin bags over each other. A safety bin bag cuddle.
Old school.
Yeah. All right, you take care.
I can't wait.
If anybody has
You
any
too.
questions, please, you can either message me and I can forward them. If you want any links to anything we've talked about, so Laura said she's going to post some links up. I'll put them on the description of the Facebook and YouTube and Twitch video. Twitch, probably not, because Twitch just dies after about 2 weeks anyway. So YouTube and Facebook, and yeah, any questions, by all means, just let us know and see what we can do to help. All right, my darling, you take care. And
Yes, you too.
thank you very
Good night.
much for joining us, and thank you everyone else for joining us as well. So all the best.
Thank you, everybody.
And this is where I've got to make sure I press the button to stop. Bye bye, everyone.